Hi everybody, welcome back to our SawdustU videos on how to make your precision fence using CNC components. I wanted to make this video to answer a few questions I'd had and to give you an update on one of the changes that I've made to the system that I think will solve a lot of the questions you people have had and make it a very easy assembly. First thing I did is I made some schematics here which I will post on the website, SawdustU.com. These aren't to scale, but they're pretty good drawings in terms of the relation of the size of the various components. And it gives measurements and stuff, so I think it'll give you guys a good idea of where you're going. It's hard to show that detail on a video. One other question I had before I get into the new change is how to cut these steel rails. This is hardened chrome steel, as I told you earlier, and there's no way you're going to cut that with a hacksaw. I just used a little metal cutting wheel on a 4-inch angle grinder and just cut through it. Be sure to wear face protection with that though, because it'll throw the sparks like crazy. If you remember on the earlier videos when we talked about the end of the fence here, and you can see that threaded rod hanging off the end there. It's not under tension now because I've got the post pushed towards the center. But it's got a nylon insert lock nut on it and a little spring. And what that enables you to do is when you run your cable from this point down the length of the saw fence toward the handle. Remember that little plate that I showed you? This is a wooden mock-up of it. That would be back here. When you run that cable from that end post to that plate and then crimp it, the threaded rod allows you the back and forth play to be able to adjust that cable properly to the right height. That's a straight shot, very easy, no problem there at all. Initially I had the other post, which is closest to the handle and to the operator, I had crimped both ends of the cable. So in other words, you had to get that cable pretty darn exactly right in order to crimp those ends. I thought about it, and I think that probably makes it a little tough because you're working in a fairly tight confined space here with this access at the end. And so I thought, what the heck, why not just do the same thing on this end? It's not a big deal to do. This is the setup the way we have it at the other end of the fence. Basically a threaded rod. This one's 3 inches. You could use 4 inches. That gives you a little bit more play. You can see the loop in the aircraft quality cable here and the crimper. That's what holds the cable there. I'm going to show you in a second a demo for those of you that have never done it, how to crimp that properly so that that never gives, because once this is set up you should never have to mess with it. It's really a nice system. Now for the sake of this video, I've got a red wire here connected to my loop at the end here, just because the red shows up on camera better. But for the sake of argument here, we'll pretend this red wire is all one piece of your aircraft quality 7-strand stainless steel cable, and we'll show you how to set that up. First thing, let me real quickly show you how this these little crimps, that's hard to see, but I'm going to get it as close as I can to the camera. You can see it. And you take your cable and just run it through these little adapters they have, crimpers. Now, one of the things you want to be sure to do is always have a clean end on your cable, because if you don't, the little wires will come unraveled and will snag when you try to put it through the other end of the crimp. So in this case, you would take your cable, run your threaded rod through here, and then you want to feed it back in a loop on itself like this, and then feed it through. Now for the sake of clarity, I don't have the threaded rod on here, but you can see the loop. But the thing I'm going to show you here in a second is how to crimp this little aluminum sleeve. Now some people, because they're flat, people tend to want to crimp them in the flat position. That's not the way you do it. The crimping force is perpendicular to that flat thing. So when you bring down your crimpers, you can see what you get. I'm going to put it right there. You see that? It literally almost melts that aluminum into the cable. And that was not going anywhere. I can guarantee you they use them on aircraft control cables. And they're designed not to ever move. So that it makes a great system, very, very strong. Okay, so now we're back to the fence and how we're going to run our cable. We've already taken care of the rear post because we know that's a straight shot, no big deal at all. I'm sure you guys have got that figured out. Make some room here and I'll get this lined up on the camera so you can follow it. So now I've got my cable that I've made. It's all aircraft cable with my threaded rod on one end, and I want to get an approximate length for it. So I've got this is my post that's closest to the handle. This is the one that I'm going to want to control with this cable. So I set my threaded rod about in the middle, just that way I have plus and minus adjustability of my cable. I run my cable down here. It's on top of the fence now as I'm just getting a ballpark. And you can see I get, okay, maybe I'll just cut a couple inches off of this, just so it's easier to work with. So now I know I've got some extra room on this to cut off and trim, but it's not so long that it's ungainly to work. So now we're going to start running it. Now from here, I think I'll switch over to our wooden model so I can got some clarity to show you on camera here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, here's our post. This is what we want to pull into toward the center to lock it to the front edge of the table saw. Here's our pivot point here. We talked about that in the earlier videos. Now I'm going to take the post off here for a second. You see the two holes there. Now those are both oversized. They don't have to be tight, and by being loose it allows the, we don't want to bind this adjustable threaded rod here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out from the beginning. This is now this would be attached to your handle. And we'll have a close-up of that on the website, SawdustU.com. And you'll be able to assemble that, and that'll be in there. I'm going to move this out of the way just simply because between my hand and the post and everything, it'll get too complicated. So I've taken my cable, I've got the threaded rod at this end. I'm going to put the cable through the lower hole, okay? Now I'm feeding this through the center of the access of the fence. Sometimes you'll have to fish it through, use a little piece of stiff wire, put a hook on the end, something like that. Usually the cable is stiff enough it'll ride on the bottom of the aluminum, and you can just poke, use something like this, some little clamps with a long neck, and reach down in the hole through the access hole and pull the cable out and fish it from there. Shouldn't be a problem. I'm sure you'll figure it out. So I feed my cable through that bottom hole. I've pulled this end out now through my access hole. So this is inside the fence. I feed the whole thing, including the loop, through my hole. Okay, see what I've got now? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to thread that nut down just so I have about, you can see how much I've got there. I've got enough on both sides that I've got some play. I keep that at 90 degrees so I know it's about in the even middle position. I pull this end of the wire out through the access hole, set that aside. Now I take another fish line, it can be a cable like this, wire, whatever you're comfortable using, feed it through the top hole from the handle end. I take it down and I pull it out of that access hole. I then just very simply, because I have to be able to pull it back through, put some masking tape or something around the ends of the wires and my fish line, pull it back through the access hole. Now it's going through that top hole, don't forget. I just pull the whole thing through. Now I've got it. I've done my loop. See what I've got here now? I pull on the cable and it pulls the post back in and locks it against this table saw. Just what I want. That's the action I want. Now the only question is, now don't forget, I'm going to put this back in the picture. This is that plate that you've put on the end of the piston that's on the handle mechanism. You've got two holes. One of them accepts the cable from the rear, which we've discussed earlier. The other hole is for the one you've just run. So you run it through that hole. You've got access through your end of the fence right here. And once again, you could probably make this a little bigger. I think I have it set as 4 inches. You could make it 5 inches to give yourself a little bit of access to this side. It's not a critical thing. You'll notice those drawings that I put on the website show 4 inches for the opening, but you could make it 5. It's whatever it depends how comfortable you are working in tight spaces and with needle nose pliers, that sort of thing. So the end of that cable, okay, I've got this now at 90 degrees. I've got my fence in the up position, and I want to make sure when I pull it, when I retract it, that I'm snugging up against the fence. I don't want to try to go too far because it won't lock in place. Just from about the 90 degree, just a little bit to snug it in against the fence. Now I know where I want my end of my cable to be. I'm going to tie a knot here, but in your case you would put a crimp on there and then use your pliers and crimp the cable down so you know you're locked in that one position. You have it like this, you pull back on the handle, and it does this action. That's all it is. It's just as simple as pie. Now you can adjust the tightness of the cable back and forth with this nut. Of course, you're using one with a nylon insert so that you don't have to worry about it just working its way loose. So once you set it, you're good. Just grab the threaded rod with needle nose pliers and adjust this nut back and forth. Can you see that okay? So it's very simple. So now you adjust the back one so that when that handle snaps down, you'll hear it lock into place. That's pulling just snugly against the back of the saw. And when you pull that handle down, the front one snaps in and just pulls snug against the front of the saw. Now I've already adjusted this metal one, so I'll show you how it works. Put it on here like this. And I'll use the side of the end of the table saw here to line it up. Now watch when I depress this. Notice the fence didn't move at all, and it is not at this point held rigid by these rails. So it's a very nice system. Now when you have it, if you have this one grabbing too tight, it'll probably tend to want to twist a little bit all over. It'll tend to want to go like that, and vice versa at the rear. If when you clamp it down, when it's in the free position like this, line it up with your miter gauge slot or with the end of your saw, and then drop it down. You hear that lock? How nicely that kind of snaps in place? Listen. Okay? The saw fence isn't moving, so I know that's perfectly adjusted. Now you've got a threaded rod at both ends of your assembly, and you can adjust each one to snug it in to get a nice tight fit. When you lock that handle down, this should be nice and tight. And then when you add the rails on it, the whole system is locked together as one, and it works like a charm. I think that'll answer your questions. If you think of something else that I didn't cover, or you have a question on how to access a cable or something like that, let me know. But I think if you go through it step by step, you'll find that it's a very intuitive system, and like I said, it works like a charm. And I think with this new adjustability that I added today to the other post, that down the road, let's say the cables do stretch or whatever, you'll have no problem at all adjusting and counteracting for any wear or anything. So that's great. Thanks for watching, and if you are interested in any of the other projects I mentioned, the router table fence, the panel saw, the track saw assembly that I'm working on right now actually, any of those kinds of things, subscribe to the channel, let me know, and I'll do some videos on those projects too, and I think you'll find them fun. They use the same CNC components that I've used for the sliding table and for the fence here, and I think you'll find it works great. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, let me know. SawdustU channel and sawdustu.com on the web. Thanks.